Fantastic. So great to have you on. And as we discussed pre-recording, you're the first hypnotherapist to join the
Yay.
show. So it's always great, particularly if I've done over 300 episodes on holistic health and I haven't covered hypnotherapy, you're probably thinking, where have you been, Anthony? But I've been building anticipation for the listeners so that they I really look forward to this conversation. But before we get underway with the conversation, I would love you to share with listeners how you've arrived at what you're doing today.
Okay. Um, it started when I was living in Connecticut. This was in the wake of 9/11. And it was the first time that we had a situation, ages of our three children, where we were living, where my wife said to me, I know that you've wanted to be a volunteer firefighter and EMT. This would be the time to do it. I'm encouraging you to go down to the firehouse and sign up. I did. First thing that they do is that they get you a very extensive physical. First day of the very extensive physical, the doctor says, "Hey, you're in really good shape for your age." And at the time, I think I was 41, and uh, come back tomorrow, give blood. So I came back the next day, I gave blood, and then I can't remember if it was that later that day or probably the next day that the my phone just started going crazy, and I finally got in touch with someone, and they said in a very grave voice, "We think that you have Lyme disease and a rare form of leukemia." And I went into immediate denial. I was like, that cannot be possible. I went back in, I gave blood, and this exact same results came back. And this sent me on, as you can imagine, a total odyssey of trying to figure this out, which started with a hematologist oncologist who told me, we don't know what causes, this was the leukemia part, we don't know what causes this, and we don't know how to cure it. And I don't know why I went a second time to the same person, but after the second time, I just said to myself, why am I here? If I took my car into a mechanic and they said, we don't know why your car is having this problem and we don't know how to fix it, I'd find another mechanic. So that's really what started this whole journey. At the time, I owned a security guard company, and I just kind of put the security guard company on autopilot, meaning I only did what I had to do. I only sent out invoices. I only did the payroll. Obviously, if any problems came up, I worked on those, but I wasn't trying to expand it. I wasn't trying to do anything else that I had been doing heretofore. And I just sunk into research. I just thought, all right, this hematologist oncologist, well-meaning, I could see pictures of little kids behind her. I had little kids at the time, and I knew how much time they took. And I thought, how much time can she spend on me? And I thought, maybe 10 minutes. And so I just thought, I'm just going to research this. I'm going to figure out everything I can. And as I did this, I went from the purely physical cause and effect into the power of the mind and the power that the mind has over the body. And that really got my attention. And as I went more into the power of the mind, then it began, and this especially was once I got trained as a hypnotherapist and once I started working with people, I started discovering there's something above that. And to me, that's what we would call spirit or spirituality. And that really started to captivate me because I think for me, I suppose like mechanics and maybe engineers or carpenters or something, I'm really interested in the root cause. I'm not so interested in the symptom. The symptom to me is really just like a sign pointing in a particular direction. And I feel like my job with my clients is to follow that sign, to follow those breadcrumbs to the absolute root cause and to resolve that. So that's literally what got me into this. I thought that I was going into this work to save other people, and it turned out that by going into that work, I discovered something at a time when it was probably better to discover it rather than a couple of years down the road.
And where are you today in terms of your medicals and health?
Uh, okay, that's an excellent question because for me, there's two answers to this question. One is the answer everyone's expecting, and I will give it, and that is, what is my white blood cell count? My white blood cell count the last time I had it done was higher than normal. So I would still be classified as having chronic lymphocytic leukemia. But it's also, it was also, the last time I had it done, less than 50%, less than half of what it was when I was diagnosed. I was also told when I was diagnosed, when I asked how long I had, they said maybe 10 years. That was in 2003. They told me maybe I had 10 years. So we're recording this in 2026. The other answer to the other way to answer this question is, it occurred to me early on my path that human beings judge their health for most of time not based upon sophisticated blood tests or MRI returns, but rather in how they felt, primarily energy levels, how they're sleeping, happiness, the way their joints moved, how other people responded to them, a twinkle in their eye or something. And from that perspective, I have felt way healthier in almost every measure I can think of than in the few years preceding the diagnosis. When I was much younger, I feel way healthier now than I did then.
Wow.
So yeah, sorry for the long-winded answer on this, but I do think in these two ways.
And it's very, like, because what they're doing with these blood results are comparing you to a sample size that may not be relevant to your genetics whatsoever, right? So
it's true, yeah.
You get what I mean? And this is like the thing I find, being in health science, is that how relevant is that normal to who you are and your background and your ancestral path or linkage, and so I'm with you. For me, a better measure of health is exactly, how do you feel? What's your energy like? Your vitality, as you say, the sparkle in the eye, and your zest for life, and all these things. And as you said, you look at these people that are now, I guess we all aspire to these, these people that live over 100 years, these centenarians. They've probably never had a blood test in their life. So
it's true.
But they could have everything that we could consider bad or not normal in their blood, but they're still living a great life well over 100 years. And so I just find it bizarre how we can be so, just stuck in this box and see everyone trying to fit in to this box. Yet we, have such diverse backgrounds and lived experience. Yeah, it's really interesting. But so it's really great to hear that you feel younger or more vital than what you were pre-diagnosis. Yeah.
For sure. And there were a couple of incidents that happened along the way that really that opened my eyes. A lot of incidents that opened my eyes, but two in particular, based on our conversation, that come to mind. One is, I remember fairly early on when I started working with a naturopath, and when I started getting control of my thoughts, and I was feeling better, and my white blood cell count was coming down, which for me was the good direction. And I got a call from doctor's office, and in a very grave voice, like an administrative assistant or something like that, office manager said, your numbers are high. And I said, yeah, I know. And she said, the numbers are, and I said, what are they? And she told me, and that number had come down pretty significantly. And I said, that's great news. And she said in the grave voice, oh no, the numbers are high. And I said, I hear what you're saying, but it's come down substantially. I'm really thrilled about that. No. It's like she was trying to get me to go to where she was, which was in this sort of depressed, serious, grave place. And I just thought, that is so fascinating how the frame that we look at something through can change how we feel about something. And how we feel about something is, we even say that in the language, how we feel about something is going to translate into our body. One of the things that I say to my clients is, it's like you're walking around with a 3-year-old version of you all the time. It's like you're holding his little hand, walking through life. And if you tell him that the world is going to end tonight and everyone's going to die, he's going to freak out. His blood pressure is going to go through the roof and he's going to be terrified. He's going to be crying because he believes everything you say. He is your subconscious mind. He takes everything literally, everything. Even if you think you're being sarcastic, what you're saying is going to him as though it's real.
Yeah, so let's explore the subconscious mind. If you could just sort of frame it up, explain to the listener, the conscious, subconscious, and I guess how your work helps the mind and how you think or behave.
Sure. So your conscious mind is often represented as the part of the iceberg that we can see that's above the surface of the water. I would say in terms of the actual percentage that your subconscious mind versus your conscious mind makes up is even more dramatic than the iceberg. In other words, the largest part is below the surface of the water. The numbers that I see quoted all the time is your conscious mind is like 6% of your mind's processing power. The subconscious mind makes up the remainder of that. And that you have something like 60,000 thoughts a day. Again, that's an average. I don't know that they can, but you get the idea. It's a lot. And you're only aware of about 6% of those thoughts. And what's on that repeating track over and over again in your subconscious mind that is dictating how you feel about certain things, the actions that you take, right? Like depression, like where's that coming from? My answer would be it's coming from probably for the vast majority of people, something that happened in the past. And the subconscious mind has no concept of time. The 3-year-old has no concept of time. Everything is now. So if something happened 40 years ago that set up a particular belief system, that set up an alert that you're not safe, for example, the conscious mind is like, I don't know what's going on. Everything is kind of fine. But you've got this other being inside of you, basically. And when something gets triggered and creates anxiety, or this depression thing is going on, I would say that's probably something that is what our conscious mind says is in the past, but our subconscious mind says is right now. And to actually take it to a more trenchant example, something like anxiety is a really good one, or PTSD. Subconscious, its job is to protect you. It has no concept of time. So a trauma that occurred, let's say 20 years ago, when a person was in the military, it's 20 years later. They're not in the military anymore. They don't wear a uniform every day. They're not in Iraq. They're somewhere in middle America in a very small, safe community. But the person's flipping out, right? Certain things happen and it causes them to snap, especially when they're sleeping. It's because they get triggered. Everybody's heard that word. And what's being triggered is danger. Subconscious thinks they're still in combat. And it's reacting as if in order to protect that person. And my approach to solving that is to help the subconscious understand that that is no longer a danger. Once it realizes that, it will stand down. And that goes, in my experience, in my view, for almost any kind of situation. A person's afraid to drive over a bridge. They're afraid to fly in an airplane. They're afraid to be in an elevator. They're afraid to speak in public. That's because there's some kind of trauma linked to that. And when they're in that situation, there's the trigger, right? And the subconscious says, you're not safe. And it sends them into a fight or flight response, sympathetic nervous system. Once we get to the root cause, we deactivate, we defuse that bomb. And the subconscious says, oh, you're safe doing this. I can stand down. I don't have to go into the sympathetic nervous system.
And so how does hypnotherapy do this? What's the process, the science behind it? How does it work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So basically what's happening when you go into hypnosis is that you're shifting from your conscious mind into your subconscious mind. And one of the things that your listeners might appreciate is everyone moves in and out of hypnosis all the time without the presence of someone like me, a hypnotist. It is portrayed, hypnosis, in popular media as this kind of magical state where one person, hypnotist, is in control of the other person, hypnotist, and they do whatever they tell them to do, and they don't remember anything. Well, when you're driving your car and you're thinking about something that's happening at work, or you're thinking about something that's happening in your relationship, and you pull into your driveway and you cannot remember driving the last 10, 20, 30 minutes, it's because you shifted into a hypnotic state, which is basically a focused state of concentration, where your aperture of awareness goes from this really large aperture, like looking through a large Palladian glass window, to looking through something the diameter of a straw, a drinking straw. That's all that's happening. And when that happens, anything outside the diameter of the straw, you don't have an awareness of. And that's why you can't, quote unquote, remember driving home. And people get worried about that, and there's no real need to, because A, it's a natural state. B, your subconscious is running just about everything in your life. You know, it's beating your heart, it's regulating your immune system, it's keeping your body at a certain temperature. It's doing all of these things, including driving the car, because you know how to do it. You don't, it's not a conscious activity anymore. And that's one of the reasons that that's a place where people's minds can, quote unquote, wander and move into that state that I'm calling hypnosis. And a hypnotist uses that state to help the person, you know, primarily in my case, to clear away the obstacles to whatever goal it is that they want to achieve. And then also plant seeds that we would call suggestions for the desired outcomes. So if your subconscious is running everything, it's because you basically have programs in there that are doing it for you. You know, learning to drive a car is building or creating a program. And once it has become think of these words, an unconscious competence. Once it's become an unconscious competence, we could say that it's now a program.
Autopilot.
And you can have, and we have programs like tying your shoes and operating your computer and shaking somebody's hand and all these things that are positive, that work for us. You know, not putting your finger in a light socket, you know, all these things work for us. But we also have programs that are deleterious, that are holding us back. And they're always based on fear. And so my job is to help people find those programs and to neutralize, deactivate them, and then help them overwrite a new program on top of it.
I'm keen to clear up this, you know, it's probably the Hollywood version, or as you said, the mystical, magical hypnotist that has got this pendulum with a clock at the end of it and swinging in front of them, and they're becoming more, you know, less and less conscious. So how do you actually induce that state of subconscious? How do you connect with that subconsciousness? Because I just want to clear that up for the listeners. I'm assuming it's not the pendulum.
Well, the pendulum, it is like another common one, especially from, and you know, going back decades, if not 100 years, is a candle flame.
Okay.
And what that's doing is it's creating eye fixation. So I said before that hypnosis is a focused state of concentration.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the ways of doing that is having someone focus on something. So that's the swinging watch, is that you're creating eye fixation, focused state of concentration, which you could do with a candle flame, or you could do with a crack on the ceiling You could do it by looking at clouds. It doesn't, you could look at the second hand on your watch. Driving, just look at the road. That's one of the reasons that driving does this. Is that it's often monotonous. And the conscious mind just checks out when something is monotonous. So these are all reasonable ways of creating hypnosis. You don't even have to do it with the person's eyes open. You can just have them close their eyes and take their mind somewhere else. That's what I would do when I was an EMT firefighter. And I would come across somebody that's been in a car accident and they're in pain. So I would just tell them, usually their eyes open and they're panicking and everything, breathing rapidly. And I'd say, look in my eyes, eye fixation. And then I would say to them, do you prefer the mountains or the beach? Confusion. Like, why is this firefighter asking me if I prefer the mountains or the beach? And they just tell me, they're already in shock. And they'd say, the mountains. Great, close your eyes. I want you to go to the mountains right now. I want you to feel and smell and breathe in that clean air of the mountains. I want you to be so far away from everything else that you can just begin to relax completely. And that person would shift within 60 to 120 seconds out of panic. And I would help break the fear, tension, pain cycle, because the more you fear, the more your body gets tense. And the more your body is tense, the more pain you feel. And if you break that, the experience of pain begins to shift and go away.
Wow. And then so once you've got them in this focus state, this hypnotic state, which, they're seeing the world through a straw, and how do you then find the blockages? Is it a conversation? How do you then move to what's stopping them achieving their goal? And in this case, their health goal.
Okay. So there's a couple of ways. There's a long way of doing this, and there's a very, very rapid way of doing this. Your body is a feedback mechanism, and it's under the control of your subconscious mind. We said earlier that your subconscious is regulating your heartbeat, your temperature, your immune system, your endocrine system, your reproductive system. It's regulating all of these things. And when you are walking down an alleyway at night and you hear footsteps behind you, your body tells you this may not be safe by having the hair on the back of your neck stand up. It's called pille. It's the same thing that happens to a cat when the cat gets scared. All the fur goes up. You may feel your heart start to beat rapidly. You may feel clammy hands and a sensation in your stomach. Your body's giving you feedback immediately. Same thing if you meet someone at a party and you feel like you've known them your whole life. It's giving you feedback at the other end of the spectrum that something about them feels familiar. Something about them feels safe. Right? So your body's giving you feedback. And what I have discovered is, and I'm sure if you don't do it yourself, which you might, you've had guests on who do, kinesiology, muscle testing. Why do we do that? Because the body is telling us what's going on, right? And I know that there's two kinds. There's like muscle imbalance kinesiology, but there's also yes, no. Give me a yes, which is strong, and a weak, which is no. You familiar with that, or you've heard about this?
No. So certainly just go into these different ways of testing what's syncing with the body or what's in harmony with the body and what's in disharmony and causing those blockages. So maybe even on the kinesiology front, this might be someone's first exposure to kinesiology.
Okay. So very quickly, when I walked away from that hematologist oncologist, because they said, we don't know what causes this kind of leukemia and we don't know how to cure it. What am I here? I went to a naturopath, and the naturopath did muscle testing, and they have you hold your arm out, straight like this, and keep it strong. And then this little woman with one or two fingers is pushing down on your wrist while you, in your other hand, hold a vial. You don't even know what's in the vial. And if what's in the vial is good for you, your arm remains strong. I'm 6'3". At the time I was 41, strong guy, right? She's like 5'3" and small and using one or two fingers. And then I'm holding these different vials, strong. And then another vial, and arm goes weak. I can't keep my arm strong. She's pushing it down. That tells her that whatever is in that vial is a no. It's bad for me. It's not good. And in the same way, you can ask any yes, no question about anything and get, in the case of muscle testing, strong or weak. Well, what I use is a pendulum. Just hold a pendulum. And you look at the pendulum, you rest your elbow on something, and you say, show me yes. And you'll get, the pendulum will start to move in a particular direction. For you, it might be clockwise. For me, it might be counterclockwise. A no, same thing. It'll move in a different direction. And then you can ask a question and say, is my body seated in a chair right now? And see if it moves in the yes direction to validate that it's working. And now you can, once you've done that, now you can start asking questions. And again, I have the client hold it. I don't hold it. And usually their mouths are hanging open going, why is this thing moving? I'm not moving my hand. Well, from a scientific perspective, what's happening is that the subconscious mind, which controls the autonomic nervous system, is creating micro movements inside the body that the client can't feel. And I can't see. I can't, the hand's not going like that, to produce these actions. So the pendulum is really, I would call it an amplifier of what your body is always telling you. You can only hear your body when it's screaming at you, when you're walking down that alley at night, or when you meet somebody you really like at a party. But all the stuff in the middle, because it's commenting on everything you do, you can't hear it because we're detached from our bodies in our culture. We wear rubber-soled shoes. We're mostly inside, artificial light, artificial heat, artificial cooling. When we go outside, we're on pavement, we're on concrete, there's noise. We're not like Native Americans or something walking around in moccasins in nature all the time. So this amplifier, I'll tell them the questions to ask, and they just ask in their mind. They don't have to say it out loud, which is the root cause of the migraine headaches I have related to a trauma earlier in my present life? And they'll get a yes or a no.
Based on the pendulum swing.
Yep. And because we've already set up for them what is yes, what is no, and we've validated that we're getting correct answers.
Correct.
And
okay.
If they get a yes, then we can say, is it a trauma that happened prior to the age of 20 years old? Yeah. Is it prior to 10 years old? No. Okay, so we know it's between 10 and 20. We can narrow it down to the exact age if we want.
Okay.
Then we can say, because often the person will say, oh my God, I haven't thought about that in ages, but when I was 12 years old, I was in a car with my family. We got in a car accident. Okay, then we can say, is the car accident at the age of 12 the root cause for the migraines that you're having? We may get a yes or a no, but even if we get a no, we can still winnow it down and get the exact incident that occurred. Then we can baseline it just on a simple 0 to 10 scale using the pendulum. Is the emotional impact of that incident a 7 or greater out of 10? If it is, that's going to be something we have to work on. We'll get the exact number. Let's say it's a 9. Once we do our work, we come back to the pendulum. We say, what is it now? And we don't stop working on it until it's a 0, a 1, or a 2. And then the work can be, I'm always looking for the fastest, most efficient ways to help people get from where they are to where they want to be. And so one of the tools that I use, because it's fast and it's efficient, is called havening. And that person will basically tap on their thighs and blink their eyes as fast as they can at the same time. It's really kind of disconcerting when you first do it because you feel uncoordinated. And before they do that, I'll have them, I'll just say, allow your mind to go to the incident that occurred when you were 12 years old. And they might not remember it really well, and it doesn't even matter. Some people have a very clear picture in their mind. Some people just hear sounds. Other people, almost everybody will immediately start to feel some kind of tension in their body as they bring their mind back to that incident. Once we've got that set up, then I do 30-second intervals where they're tapping and blinking. And there's something about this where the mind, part of the mind can actually solve the problem, either by neutralizing it. In other words, what they'll say as they go through each iteration is like, oh, wow, I could see it so clearly before, and now it's fading. Either it's getting sort of filmy, like a cloud is forming over it, or it's getting smaller, like it's moving farther away from me. And simultaneous to that, their body begins to shift. So the information I've collected about where they feel tension, sometimes they feel pain in their bodies, that starts to fade and go away. And then I discovered that a person is actually in hypnosis when they're doing this, because they're in a focused state of concentration, right? So some of those iterations, I will then start delivering hypnotic suggestions to them based upon what it was. So it could be based upon guilt, could be based upon shame, it could be based upon shock, could be based upon fear. But whatever it was, I'll start delivering counter programming while they're doing the tapping and blinking.
So can you just share some examples of what that might be in a particular case?
You mean what is an example of what we would use it for?
No, in terms of that reprogramming. So they're doing
the counter programming?
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So let's say, and this has really kind of blown me away. I've been doing this work for 19 years. And I'm not making any kind of political evaluation or judgment. I'm just reporting what I have discovered. And that is that women who have had abortions, almost to a person, I would say it's in the high 90 percentage, is carrying around some kind of guilt because they had the abortion. I can't totally explain it, but that's what I have found. Even women that thought that they had moved past it, when we use the pendulum, they're holding it. And it says that's a trauma. And and then we baseline it, it's like an 8, 9, a 10.
Wow.
We got to deal with that.
Yeah.
So sometimes that can be resolved with havening, and sometimes it needs hypnosis to be resolved. An example of the programming that you were asking about would be you were operating at a time when you did the best that you could for what was going on in your life. You know, many people do this. You're safe now. It's okay to move on. All of that's in the past. It's time to let go. For example, a more spiritual way of approaching that, which is often necessary in that example, is to use hypnosis and to shift seamlessly from the tapping and blinking of the havening, where, as I said, a person's already moving into hypnosis. They're already moving into that focused state. Their eyes are blinking and then they're closed. And I'm talking to them. And so we will have, it's a spiritual version, the child come. And then the person, the adult, the client, can say to that child, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. And the child always says, I don't blame you for this. It's not your fault. I love you. And there's tears streaming down the faces of these women. But so much of it is total relief. Like a letting go of this burden that they had been carrying. And then in their consciousness, in this hypnotic state, we have someone who loves the child from the other side. So it could be an angel, it could be an ascended master, it could be a spirit guide, it could be a deceased relative, it could be like a loving grandmother figure or something, comes, and then the client is able to give the child over to this loving being. And this resolves this turmoil that they've been, as I say, carrying around with them, as though they were carrying, a 10-pound lead weight somewhere on their body. They've been carrying it so long they forgot they were carrying it. But when we tap into it, all this emotion comes up. But it doesn't come up just to bathe in the pain of it. It's really a way of excising it, of releasing it, letting it go. And then afterwards, the person will say to me, the woman will say to me, "Oh my God, I feel so much lighter." Like being unburdened.
Yeah, wow. Wow. That's an incredible example. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's really powerful and helpful because a lot of these things we hold on to are societal beliefs, or that's been put upon us, and
Yes.
and as you've shared as an example, would letting them know that they did the best they could with the resources they had at the time,
Yep.
and and that's fine. And yeah, so and the flip side is if they had of so the opposite is that they give birth to the baby, is that if they weren't in a ready state or a resourceful state, then how would the baby be today? You got to mean how much trauma would that baby be carrying just because they weren't in the state of being able to care or support that baby in the way that they want to. And so it's not necessarily that they've done harm. They you could look at the opposite and say, based on where they're at, they've done the best thing for that baby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
So
from a spiritual perspective, we were talking about before we started recording that I used to be an actor in New York City. That's how my wife and I met. And recently, I found myself through a very bizarre series of events that included an armed robbery, back on the stage doing Shakespeare. And Shakespeare said, all the world's a stage. All the men and women are merely players. Each one has their exits and their entrances. He also said it's a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury and signifying nothing, which I don't believe that last part, but I do believe that this is a place as souls that we come to learn things. And it's nothing that we do here condemns us forever. That's not how the system is set up. It's set up to learn. And you and I are humans, and it's very hard to judge things, one way or the other. And I don't feel like my job is to judge things one way or the other. It's really to help people move through trauma that they've been carrying. And I do believe in the power of free will. And I do believe in the awesome power of forgiveness. Because we all make mistakes. We all do things that we regret. Every one of us, no one accepted. And the where that's damaging is when we hold on to it. And we think, well, that's part of me. I've been stained forever. And that's simply not true. And so I would say at the root, the real root of anything that somebody comes to me for, it's usually forgiveness. Being forgiven for something that they've done, forgiving someone else for something they've done to them, because when you're holding on to resentment and bitterness and anger, it's harming you. And then the big kahuna is forgiving themselves for something. That's usually the hardest. We're usually harder on ourselves than we are on others. And I have to find ways of not only determining what's going on, what they're holding on to, but helping them move through it, because usually they're going to be the biggest obstacle to it.
And just I'm thinking in terms of concluding our amazing conversation, I've learned so much, and I'm sure the listeners have. Just going back to that, that moment in your life where you got this diagnosis, and they're telling you at the time, I've got no idea what's wrong with you or what caused it, and you're thinking, well, yeah, I want to find out. I want to correct this. I've got young children. Yeah. And the naturopath did the kinesiology, and you're holding vials. If you don't mind sharing, what were some of the feedback that you got from the naturopath as to what may be behind what was the high immune response?
The biggest thing that we got that was the most valuable to me was heavy metal poisoning. So mercury was literally off the charts of the tests that we did, and lead was significantly elevated. I worked about a block and a half away from Ground Zero in New York City. And I was admitted into the 9/11 program because I worked there at that time, and there was so much crap in the air, not to mention the emotional trauma of being in basically a combat zone. And so that was a big piece with working with her. We also did some other things that involved more esoteric stuff. So she was an interesting person. I didn't know this when I went out to be trained as a hypnotist, but we needed to get letters of reference to be admitted to this school, and I thought of her. Hey, she's my doctor basically, and I'd become very friendly with her. And when I asked her for the reference, she said, "Why are you asking me about this?" And I thought, why is she responding this way? And it turned out that she had been a hypnotist before she became a naturopath. And then she was trained as a shaman after this. And so we did some shamanic journeying. And I can recall a shamanic journey where, it was kind of gruesome, but I can recall dragging essentially my own corpse, like across a battlefield, where part of the corpse was like mutilated. And I remember doing this kind of deep spiritual, emotional work with her, in addition to the kind of more medical work with her. And I can't tell you how each little thing lines up with my health and everything, but the way I think about it for myself and with my clients is that we're all walking around with invisible arrows sticking out of our body, and each arrow is like some kind of an emotional wound based upon stuff that happened to us in the past. And it could be earlier in this life, it could be a past life. And my job with my clients is to find those invisible arrows and remove them. And when that happens, people feel lighter. They feel happier. They feel more capable. And oftentimes old pains go away. They just become healthier. And why wouldn't you if you started to remove this stuff? Because mind and body are connected.
So my final question, Peter, is if the listeners, viewers out there are feeling that there might be some of these invisible arrows that they're carrying around, how can they best connect with you and reach out to you?
So the most efficient way would be my website, which is blueskyhypnosis.com. Named after where I studied, which was in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and the sky was like impossibly blue. So blueskyhypnosis.com, that's where they can learn more about me. They can contact me and so on. The other resource I would direct them to is my YouTube channel, which is also Blue Sky Hypnosis. And I've got, I think, 250 pieces of content on there, 130,000 subscribers. There's a lot of content on there, which is basically like a self-hypnosis for many, many different, issues and so on. There's even past life regression tracks, and you can read the comments about the kind of experiences that people have had before you try any of them. But it could be something as prosaic as weight loss, or it could be something as esoteric as past life regression, and a whole bunch of things in between. Lately, for some reason, people have been looking at my public speaking one. Business people or students, and using that, people who are afraid to speak in public, and, writing these really great comments about how they were able to give the presentation and all went really, really well. And so those would be the two ways: website and YouTube channel.
Fantastic. And to the listeners, just go directly to the show notes and you'll find those links in the show notes. So I really appreciate you coming on the show, Peter, and sharing your wisdom, insights, experience. You've really shared a lot in terms of how the conscious, subconscious mind interact and how people can look at different ways to heal themselves. I think it's really important that we know that this sort of works out there as an option to help them heal from their pain or from their previous trauma that they're still carrying today. So really appreciate you coming on the show, Peter.
You're welcome. Good to meet you, and thanks for a great conversation.
You're welcome, Peter. And to the listeners, viewers, please reach out to Peter if you're feeling the pain or feeling that you're carrying a burden from, a traumatic past or whatever. Please reach out to Peter either via his YouTube channel or website, and continue to follow, subscribe to the Me&My Health Up podcast. You'll get really holistic insights into how you can either heal yourself or go on a journey to heal yourself. So thank you for listening and viewing the Me&My Health Up podcast. And until next time, continue to health up.